My name is Chuck Rohde, and I'm a private attorney with the firm of Rohde and Infelice in Wheaton. In a very brief minute, I will be turning the program over to Chief Judge Dan Guerin, but I want to make some quick announcements first on behalf of the DuPage County Bar Association, which is facilitating this virtual meeting. I will be the chair of the Criminal Law Committee for the DCBA in the upcoming year. Attorney Rich Russo is the vice chair. Reiterating what was mentioned in our introduction email, if anybody has any questions, suggestions on CLEs or journal articles or any way that our committee can serve the larger community, please consider there to be an open invitation from Rich and I to contact us. We will still be providing a full year of CLE programming, although for the foreseeable future, it will be done via Zoom. Typically, our CLEs will be the first Tuesday of the month at noon. Our first CLE will be September 1st. The topic will be jury nullification, and our friend Neil Levine will start it off by providing an introduction to this legal concept, theory behind it, and how it is manifest in the courtroom. After Neil, we have a special guest, Bill Lamb. Bill is a retired New Jersey prosecutor who's also a baseball historian. He has literally written the book on the courtroom proceedings for the 1919 Chicago Black Sox scandal. He will discuss this case, one of the most famous criminal trials in Chicago history, and tell us why he believes that its verdicts were an instance of jury nullification. My hope is that the CLE will be a good mix of legal theory and practical tips, along with a lesson on Chicago and baseball history. Please note that registrations are available on the DCBA website. If you are not a DCBA member, you are welcome to attend, but you will not receive CLE credit. Also, please join lawyers lending a hand at the Wayne Township Food Pantry on Thursday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m. Sort and box food for the pantry's clients. Details can also be found at the DCBA website calendar. Today's agenda will be about the upcoming operational charges at the DuPage County Courthouse regarding criminal proceedings. I'd like to thank Judge Guerin, the DuPage County Clerk of Court Office, and Public Defender Jeff York for being part of this program, which is the latest in a continuing series of outreach from the judicial branch to the courthouse stakeholders as we all deal with this pandemic and the changes it brings to the practice of law. The plan is to have a number of speakers starting with Judge Guerin and then followed by the clerk's office and then ending with Jeff York from the Public Defender's office. I'm gonna fade out here, but we'll chime back in for a question and answer session at the end. Please use the Q&A feature for questions, and we will try to get to as many as we possibly can at the end of the presentations. No questions about specific cases can be answered, but we do plan on compiling a list of questions and answers and making them available on the DCBA website. Also, this video presentation is being recorded and will be available for viewing at the DCBA website at dcba.org/COVID update. With that, I want to turn the platform over to Judge Guerin and thank him again for continued communication with the legal community during these difficult times.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Chuck. And I want to thank everybody for participating in this, this seminar today. I want to thank the DCBA for hosting this. It's an invaluable contribution to our circuit, and all the other ones you've hosted too, and we got started in the civil divisions, have been a tremendous asset to us to try to get the word out on how we're proceeding and to get everybody up to speed. So I really thank the DCBA for that. And I also want to thank what we're calling, I guess, the panelists, Suzanne Armstrong, the trial court administrator, and Public Defender Jeff York. State's Attorney Bob Berlin and Judge Bugos is here to help with your questions. Hopefully we can answer most of the questions you may have. I also want to thank Chris Ketcherubis and his office. The staff that I deal with pretty much every day, Kevin Vasky and Jeff Davies and Lisa Goodwin and Bob Keltner. I know there's a lot of other people in the clerk's office who are working on this. I just mentioned those people. I really appreciate everything they've done to help us get going here. So as everybody knows, we're set to begin Zoom and felony and misdemeanor on Monday, with some exceptions that we'll talk about. The administrative order outlining this was filed on Tuesday. There was a a very short amendment that was filed yesterday on that we can talk about, but the administrative order is there. Please review it, familiarize yourself with it, and communicate this process with your clients. The clerk's office sent notices out to everybody that may have been, will be affected by this, but we really are counting on the attorneys to communicate with their clients so that people are familiar with this adjustment that we're making with Zoom. I just wanted to take, a minute to say, when COVID-19 hit in March, basically, the Illinois Supreme Court issued some orders, and that's what we've had to operate under. We continue to operate under. And they ordered the courts to conduct essential matters in person and other matters remotely if it was possible. And of course, they told the speedy trial terms on trials. Just like all the other circuits in the state, nobody was really very good yet at doing anything remotely. Nobody really had heard of Zoom, quite frankly. So we complied and adjusted. We never closed the courthouse. And all the essential matters, civil and criminal, proceeded. And I think you all know how we did that originally. At the same time, we were all working extremely hard to handle matters remotely. And so Chancery, Domestic Relations and Law started up with Zoom hearings May 18th, and they're still doing it. I think they've done a fantastic job working with everybody together to kind of smooth that whole process out. But that's been going on since May 18th. Criminal and traffic type matters, greater challenges for remote, as you know. Constitutional and statutory issues and the players involved is just a different animal, really. So there was an amended Illinois Supreme Court order that allowed the courts to conduct all matters, essential and non-essential, based on a schedule that the chief judge would establish. So June 8th is when we expanded in a gradual and measured approach in criminal. So we capped the court calls. We waived defendants' appearances when they were represented. We continued cases when we had to. And that's how we've been operating until today. So it has become apparent to me and to the other judges that there is a need for an adjustment to Zoom. And let me explain that, the COVID-19 numbers, there's been a substantial change upward. I looked at the numbers, I think the other day in Illinois, the positive tests sharply up since July. I think it was approximately 214,000 positive cases in Illinois. There's about 8,000 deaths. And DuPage had, last I checked, 13,500 or so positive cases and 528 deaths. So the governor has talked about, we've reached a danger point. He's placed numerous counties on a watch list. I think it's up to 9 or so. Some of them are our neighbors. In the courthouse, there have been increased cases since July of positive tests. We've done a great job with contact tracing. We've worked with the health department. All the departments here in the courthouse have worked together. Letters have gone out from me to the relevant people that may have been affected by any positive tests. But there's no question there's been an uptick that's noticeable. The Kane County Youth Home is closed because of COVID-19 positive cases. Our juvenile detainees are in Will County right now. And I think you've all seen me walking through the courthouse. Despite the caps and the waivers and the continuances, the hallways and some of the courtrooms are crowded. They're crowded. And, our goal has always been the health and safety of everybody who's working in the courthouse and the fair and efficient administration of justice. And also, I want to be consistent with other counties whenever possible. So that is some of the reasons, those are some of the reasons we've decided to make this adjustment. So As I said, the plan's outlined in the administrative order, but the basic plan is this. We're resuming most felony and misdemeanor cases, either beginning at 8:30 if they're misdemeanors or 9 o'clock if they're felonies. There are some case type exceptions. Orders of protection, traffic matters, and juvenile matters are still proceeding as they have. The nature of those cases and just some of the challenges involved, I think it's best just to keep them in person at their currently scheduled times. So nothing is changing at this point with orders of protection, traffic, juvenile matters. The other exceptions to Zoom are matters that are set by the judge at 11 o'clock or 1:30 p.m. So just so it's clear, this doesn't mean that in-person proceedings just starts at 11 or 1:30 for anybody. These are matters that are set by the court for 11 or 1:30. That's what's going in person. And the administrative order lays out what types of matters are going to be conducted in person. I'll go through them. Guilty pleas. Some jurisdictions have tried to do those on Zoom. I don't think it's a good idea, certainly not for felonies. I think it's a serious matter, obviously, and it should be done in person. So we're going to still do guilty pleas at this time in person. In custody cases, when there's no waiver of an appearance, I know that the defense bar, the public defender have been very cooperative and very helpful with us waiving appearances whenever it seems a reasonable thing to do, maybe on a quick status and things like that. It's helped us out tremendously to have a lot of the inmates' appearances waived. But when they can't be, then the inmate will be brought at 11 or 1:30. Motions to increase or revoke a bond are going to be in person. Evidentiary hearings, so for example, SS hearings, motions to suppress, sentencing hearings, evidentiary hearings are going to be in person still. Bench trials and jury trials are in person. And then anything else deemed essential to proceed in person by the judge will be in person when the judge orders it, orally or in writing. So anything else the judge thinks has to go in person will go in person. So that's the basic outline of what we're looking at. Now, the amended administrative order I issued, the first one said in custody inmates who don't waive can only be brought over at 1:30. There was a discussion with the jail. They have some scheduling and staffing issues when lunchtime hits. So they were telling me it was going to be very difficult if they had to get a lot of inmates over here at 11 a.m. But we've talked about it with them. And again, we anticipate a great majority are still going to be waived. Any matters that don't have to be brought over at 11 will still be set over to 1:30, but I amended the order to give the judge discretion. If the judge feels like it's something the judge really wants to get done at 11, for example, a jury trial, we're not going to wait till 1:30 to start a jury. Or if they want to start a hearing, or let's say they want to handle a guilty plea, they're done Zooming at 10:30 and they don't want to sit around till 1:30. Then the amended order gives the judge the authority to say, bring the inmate at 11. And so the jail understands that. They're going to work with us. We're going to hope to keep it to just, very essential things with an inmate that have to go at 11. But it is there for the opportunity to proceed. One question I've had is, how do we handle hearing and trial calls? So the actual calls, when you're trying to figure out what's ready, the hearing and trial calls are going to be conducted by Zoom. But once the judge decides which case is proceeding, then the judge will set it at either 11 or 1:30 or, in the judge's discretion. So the actual call is on Zoom, and then whatever is chosen is at 11 or 1:30. Regarding the municipal prosecutions, because that came up obviously as a somewhat of a challenge. I set up stations in the ARC, so there's one station you can Zoom from and have access to ducts for electronic orders in the ARC. And then there's the adjoining two fairly large conference rooms in the arbitration center that are now empty that we have set up so that you can Zoom and have access to ducts for the electronic orders there as well. So there's 3 spots down there for municipal prosecutors to work from. I was always told, I've been told that the rules and the security issues in the county IT did not allow persons access to electronic orders or ducts outside the county equipment. So it's always been understood that that's why people just can't do things and access ducts from some other place. So the reason I set it up here, of course, is the prosecutors then can go up to the courtroom if they have to at 11 o'clock. If one of their cases got carried over for a hearing, they'd be in the courthouse, you'll be in those areas, you can go right upstairs and handle your in-person hearing. Now, apparently some municipal prosecutors arranged with the clerk's office a means to access ducts and have electronic orders from their office. The clerk's office worked with them, and I appreciate the clerk finding a way to do that. So it works out fine if the prosecutor's office is close to the courthouse, so the prosecutor can walk over or drive over and be here at 11 o'clock if they're needed. But obviously some prosecutors don't work that close, so they'll be Zooming in the morning. They can't get here at 11 o'clock if they're in their office Zooming. So that's why they're going to have to do it from these places inside the courthouse. So what we have now is some Zoom from offices and some Zoom from the courthouse, but as I said, some of the prosecutors went ahead and set this up, so that's fine. But let me just say the bottom line. The prosecutors have to be in the courtroom ready with their witnesses if necessary. If something's continued for a hearing at 11, we are not waiting around for prosecutors and witnesses to show up. So I just hope everybody understands we've worked really hard to make these accommodations in the courthouse because we understand the challenges for the municipal prosecutors. But if something goes, it goes, and you got to be there. So I know everybody will work this out, and the judges will be sensitive to schedules. They've got options, 11 or 1:30. So I'll work it out with the court, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that situation. I'll turn it over to the Lisa Goodwin to start in on some of the specifics on how to access the Zoom hearings and everything. But everybody knows COVID-19, it's presented an extraordinary challenge to the justice system. Our circuit's been able to conduct fair and efficient court proceedings while we guarded everyone's health and safety. And we've been able to do it because of tremendous cooperation. The judges and the administrative staff, the circuit clerk's office, the sheriff, state's attorney and the PD, probation, the DCVA, our interpreters, our family shelter people, our facilities department, everybody, the public. I've said before, it's somewhat ironic. We have this fantastic adversary system of justice, but we've been able to maintain it only because we've had to think of creative efforts of cooperation and communication to keep the adversary system going. And so I do want to thank everybody who has adjusted to things that have come out. I know I've been issuing a lot of orders. I appreciate everybody staying on top of it. I think everyone's done a fantastic job. I think we're in good shape in DuPage County. We're in good shape in this circuit. I know It's going to be an adjustment. It's going to be bumpy at first. Civil was bumpy, but civil is humming pretty smoothly right now. And I'm sure criminal will too. So I'm confident we can adjust. I'm confident we can ensure access to justice for everyone. Patience and cooperation and creativity will get us there. So thank you. Hopefully I can answer your questions when they come up. I'll turn it over to Lisa Goodwin to get into the nuts and bolts of the situation.
Thank you, Judge Guerin. And while I am sharing my screen, I'd like to point out that we will be taking questions using the Q&A feature in the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then we will try to be addressing the answers to these questions at the end of the presentation. So hopefully you can see my screen. What I am displaying on my screen right now is the 18thjudicial.org website. And this is the website that everyone is going to be using to access the links to their Zoom proceedings. And that is every participant in the court process. That's the clerk, the court reporters, the attorneys, any parties to the case that would like to join. Everyone will be accessing them through this remote court proceedings Zoom icon on the www.18thjudicial.org website. There is no login required to access these Zoom meeting links from this website. So if you have your own Zoom account, I'll show you a good way to access the meetings from your own Zoom account if you already have one. But you click on this icon and it brings up this window. And if you know, as attorneys you might know your courtroom and it defaults to the current day. So we are looking right now at the Zoom meeting for courtroom 4000. On this particular day, you do have to click this CAPTCHA box here that is preventing some Zoom bombing inquiries, hopefully. And then you click on search schedule and you get your Zoom hearing information. Now, if you only know the case number, or if possibly you have some parties on the case who are more familiar with their case number than they are their court location, they can enter their case number here, click this checkbox here saying you're not a robot, and you click search schedule. Now, the Zoom hearings, the Zoom meeting links are generated at noon on the prior day. So these meeting links that we're looking at right now were generated yesterday at noon. Since it's afternoon today, the links for, if this was Monday, the links for Monday would be up there today. But you'll see that the Zoom proceeding links are here. There is no time for this Zoom hearing. This Zoom hearing is 1 8-hour meeting, and the judge in this courtroom can use this Zoom meeting as they wish. They can start at 8:30, they can start at 9 o'clock, they can leave the meeting, they can come back into it at 10, they can come back into it at 2. This meeting is good for the entire business day of the court. If you happen to be practicing in civil, you may be aware that the Domestic Relations Division is doing one separate Zoom meeting on a case-by-case basis, but the Domestic Relations and Civil is the only division that is doing that. Everyone else is running with one big, long 8-hour Zoom meeting, again, that you go in and out of as needed throughout the entire day. So if you have your own Zoom account, and some of you may, because as attorneys, we are aware that you may be scheduled to appear in different courtrooms at the same time. And if that's the case, then what you want to do is you want to go to the Zoom website, which is zoom.us. And hopefully if you have an account with Zoom, you're familiar with this website. You would sign in and then you would click join a meeting. And the meeting parameters are right here on your screen. So you will still need this Zoom information on a daily basis. This is going to change every day. So you will need to look up your Zoom information and then use the meeting ID and the passcode to log in with your Zoom account. If you have a paid Zoom account, you can attend simultaneous Zoom meetings, but only on certain paid Zoom accounts. If you do not have a Zoom account, what we're asking is if you go into, for example, courtroom 4000, and you have to step out of your virtual court proceeding to join a different court proceeding or to handle a different matter, we're asking you to use the chat feature and chat with the clerk in the courtroom. And so if you look at the participants list on your particular Zoom meeting, you will see one that should be named clerk or courtroom clerk or circuit clerk. And we're asking you to chat with the courtroom clerk, to say, hey, I have to step out. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I'm waiting for you to call my case. So you have the ability to communicate with the courtroom clerk just as if you would if you were in the courtroom and walking up to talk to him or her in the courtroom. So please use the chat feature to communicate with the clerk in the courtroom if you need to. Like Judge Guerin said, the juvenile courtrooms are going to be in the next phase. So this is only going to be for felony, misdemeanor, and DUI court. Judge Guerin mentioned that we here in the clerk's office have come up with what I think is a pretty good solution for remote access to ducts. Now, the state's attorneys are going to be in their offices, the public defender is going to be in their offices, but the local prosecutors are, they don't have, permanent offices in the courthouse. So we have, and to be clear though, you need the access, the remote access to ducts in order to prepare the electronic orders in your criminal cases. So we have, Suzanne Armstrong with the Chief Judge's Office sent out an email to the DUI local prosecutors and asked them to provide some information in order to register with us to get remote ducts access. So many of the local prosecutors have, some have not. If you do not communicate with us to set up that remote access, then you will not be able to create electronic orders in ducts starting on Monday. So it's very important that you respond to that email and provide us some registration information so we can create your accounts. If you did register, you should have received an email with instructions on how to install a piece of software. That was sent out yesterday. So if you don't have that instruction sheet that we sent out, then please contact us so we can get you configured and set up. And this is only for the DUI prosecutors at this time. When we, in the future, talk about going remote in the traffic division, we will address that at that time. If you, like Judge Guerin said, if your office is too far away for you to be in the courthouse at 11 o'clock, you will be able to do that from within the courthouse. If you install this software on a laptop, you can bring it into the courthouse and access docs from anywhere you like in the courthouse. If you don't have a laptop, there are 3 stations in the Attorney Resource Center that will be configured with this software, but you still need to set up a login with us in order for the remote ducts access from the ARC. So the machines will be available in the ARC, but you still need a login to the system that you will obtain through the circuit clerk's office. So that is really all that we have to show you on the Zoom hearings and how to access the information. Judge Guerin has produced this rules of conduct for rules of courtroom conduct on a Zoom hearing. This is available to you and the public. And then we have more information on Zoom instruction here that you can download. Now, if your parties or your clients don't have access to a computer or a smartphone or a tablet where they could access these Zoom proceedings, they can call in using just a regular phone. by dialing one of these 3 phone numbers and then providing the meeting ID and passcode. So you don't necessarily have to attend with a video call, but you can just attend by phone. And I should also mention that that this functionality does not require a computer or a laptop. You can join via a tablet or a smartphone and attend these meetings. Okay, so we're going to give you a really quick demonstration now of e-filing in the criminal division. This is it's our old e-filing platform. It's also integrated with the statewide EFM in the civil arena, but you will go to i2file.net and register for an account if you don't already have one. If you have e-filed in civil cases through the statewide EFM, this is the same login and password that you use for that system. And so you click login, and these colorful boxes that you are seeing right here, these are for civil division cases only. This is the statewide EFM or e-filing manager. These are the buttons that you use to access civil e-filing. If you want to use criminal e-filing, you click here, up here at the top of the screen. Now I'm going to bounce over really quickly to our test environment and show you an actual an electronic filing, which is much simpler than the civil side. This has been in use in DuPage County for years. If you're interested, all of these jurisdictions that you see on the screen right here are accepting criminal e-filing through this system, but only criminal, not civil. So you select your jurisdiction, make sure you choose DuPage County. You will be probably filing documents into an existing case, which is this link. You can request document copies here, the same as you can through our e-access application. If you file a document into an existing case, provide a case number, provide the plaintiff and the defendant, click next. Select a document type. You can select anything from this list. If you're not exactly sure what it is, you can select other, but we'll choose an answer. The comments here are for review by the clerk if they're not sure how to properly code your document filing. And then you, right here, click this browse button, and I'm just gonna randomly select a admin order PDF. And you will see here that now I have uploaded this document to the i2File criminal e-filing system. It is right here. If you need to sign it, you can click the sign link right here. And I have, here's the signature icon here. If you have a signature image on your computer, you can click browse here and you can attach a signature that hopefully you have on your desktop. Here's my signature, my name's Lisa. And then I click save. And then here's the image that just got loaded into the system, and I can apply that signature on this document wherever I like. Personally, I find it a little bit easier to use a digital signature in a Microsoft Word document or in an Adobe PDF, and not necessarily, depend on the ability to sign the document within i2File. However, that is an option for you to use as well. And so we have one document attached. We've identified it as an answer. You click next. And now you're showing what all the documents that you have uploaded in your transaction here, and you click submit and confirm it. And here's your transaction ID. And this has now been sent to the circuit clerk's office for review. You can click back to home, and then to review the status of your filings, here they are. I filed one earlier today to test it, to make sure it was working, because we are in the test environment here. And your file stamped copy will be available for download through this interface when it is accepted by the circuit clerk. And that is, that's all we have to show you. That was a very fast e-filing demo here that we did. If you need more assistance, there is a little help icon here in the upper right-hand corner with a manual that you can download if you're not that familiar with the this I-2 file system and the old way that we used to do e-filing here in DuPage County. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and I am going to turn it over to Public Defender Jeff York.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everybody. I also am going to be sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see that. And we're going to just get right into it. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to just give you some Zoom basics, equipment, setting up, kind of to make your experience a little bit better, a bunch of lawyer stuff, and then resources, logistics, and how we're going to get through this, okay? If you have the ability to use an actual computer, do it. It's much harder to Zoom on a phone. If you've done it on a phone, it's just a lot tougher. I recommend you plug into power. We had a Zoom meeting the other day in our office, and after about an hour and a half, the laptop was getting pretty low. So either plug into power or be really sure that you have enough power to do it, and you need a strong internet. So Lisa kind of got us to the point where we're into the Zoom hearing, okay? So now what? I recommend that if you download Zoom, to set some things up before Monday. So if you start a Zoom meeting, if you go to this new meeting icon, I think that will help. That's the easiest way to change settings, at least that I've found. And so you may not be able to do that now while you're in a meeting, but if you start your own, you'll be able to do that. This is what it would look like. Your name would appear there. The share screen button is at the bottom. So if you had to show a document or show the judge something, you could do that. That's what I'm doing now. Notice my Zoom name right now is Jeff York, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The two most important buttons are going to be these things in the bottom left corner, the unmute and the start video button. And this is where also you can change a lot of your settings, okay? If you click the little hat thing or little arrow thing next to start video, you'll get video options. When you do that, if you have more than one camera, you can select it there. You also can turn your camera on and off usually that way. Also, you can choose a virtual background. They have a bunch of virtual backgrounds that they have available that you can choose. You also can add any picture you want. In my office, we call this the Sweeney. Don't use that. But what we did is we just walked around our office and took pictures of things that would be appropriate backgrounds. Blank walls are fine. We did some books, stuff like that, especially because other people are going to be watching the Zoom while you're there. Let's talk about sound and microphones. So if you click this little button next to the microphone, you get a lot more options than you did with the video. So you might have a microphone if you're using headphones, both in your headphone and on your computer. Same thing with speakers. A lot of times if you can't hear or talk, that's the problem. I recommend trying to figure out, however you're going to Zoom on Monday, testing it, and we'll get to that in a minute. There's a test speaker and microphone thing down here. So once you're set up with your headphones, whatever you're planning on using, if you do that, Zoom will walk you through how to both test your microphone and your speakers. It's pretty easy. If you are in an office with a lot of background noise, I do recommend headphones, but test them first. It's not as simple as just plugging your headphones in. Headphones help minimize the feedback and the background noise if you're near other people. While you're Zooming, or before, if you start this Zoom meeting, you're probably going to want to change your name. So you can either click the three dots in the right-hand corner of your picture, or if you right-click in a Zoom meeting, you'll get the same options. And here's where you'd want to click the rename. You're going to want to do that because you're going to want to identify what you're there for and who you are. So if you're a state's attorney, you probably want ASA and then your name. If you're an attorney, you just want attorney and then your name. I think that'll be easier for the judges to kind of determine who is who. Their screens are going to be pretty filled with lots of little windows, and I think that will help. And then you could just keep it on this screen until you're ready. We're recommending that when you're ready for a case, go ahead and start your video. But until then, let's say you're waiting for your client. If you don't show your video, the judge probably won't be calling on you. So if you use the rename button, so my name here, my first name is Attorney Jeff, and my last name is York. Okay, there's only 2 spots, so you have to keep that in mind as well. So let's get prepared for Zoom court. As Judge Guerin said, basically until 11 o'clock, it's Zoom only. 11 o'clock is in-person required, and those are set by the judge. They could be set by the judge from earlier in the call, and there may be some in custody, but most in custody and hearings, anything left over from the 11 o'clock call will be at 1:30. If you show up to court live starting Monday, you're going to get, or your client is going to get a sheet explaining what Zoom court is and how to get there. I don't think the judges are going to be like, well, since you're here, I'll just call your case offline. That's not going to happen. It's going to be Zoom, and it's going to be Zoom all the time. The law library has 5 Zoom kiosks available with headphones. The ARC has those little rooms, and there's probably room in there, and they have Wi-Fi. But clients are going to be directed to either use their phone, go somewhere else, or go to the ARC. The chat feature, which is at the bottom of your screen down here, is going to be on. You can indicate you're ready on a case. That probably would help the clerks. You could put the case number or the name or both. And just so you know, the chat feature is not saved. That is not something that is recorded, unlike the rest of the Zoom court will be. You want to make sure you start your video when you're ready. You don't have to start your audio right away because the judge may be dealing with other matters. But that way the judge or the clerk will know that you want to be called on. You can tell your clients the same thing. I recommend that you are not eating, you don't have illegal things in the background, and that you're fully clothed. You're going to want to tell your clients the same thing, and talk to your clients. Other counties, their experiences, and our juvenile abuse and neglect court have experienced all kinds of things. People driving, people in the dollar store, people lying in bed, people making breakfast. This is court, and so you should definitely be aware of it, but also make sure your clients are aware of it. So don't ruin the Zoom. What if you need to talk to the state's attorney or your client in the middle of court? Really, for the state's attorney's sake, if you can, please do it ahead of time. They're going to be Zooming and trying to do orders over ducks. I'm sure they would appreciate it if you could reach out to them ahead of time if you wanted an offer or you needed a response to something. Judges can set up these breakout rooms, and you'll get something on your screen that looks like this or this, or you can be invited to one of these rooms to either talk to a prosecutor if the judge has set that up, or your client if you need to. You need to click out of those rooms when you're done, otherwise they won't know. And those rooms are not recorded. As the judge mentioned, the clerk's office sent notice to clients that had cases up. And essentially, it tells them that most matters are proceeding via Zoom unless they're one of those exceptions. And that if you were ordered to be there in person, that now you're ordered to be there via Zoom. So again, if your clients were told they had to be in court on the next court date, they got notice that now they have to appear via Zoom. Lisa covered filing documents ahead of time. In addition to that, the court wants them mailed to the judges 24 hours ahead of time. Their addresses are in the administrative order that the judge issued earlier this week. So that way they have the documents and can review them before court. Lisa talked about how to sign stuff in I-2 but how do you get your clients to sign stuff from far away? There's a few different ways to do that. In Adobe, there's this little pen looking thing. Looks like that. When you click on that, you get a thing that says add signature. When you click on add signature, you get a few options. If you have the typed version, you get like a pretend cursive that they type for you. If you hit the draw function, you can draw your own. I was really bad at it, so I stopped after 2 letters. Once you hit apply and you save either one of those, you can drop those in any Adobe document, or your clients could. In addition, through Adobe, You can actually scan PDFs into your phone and send them like you would a picture. With iPhones, you use the note feature that comes with an iPhone. With Androids, you can use Google Drive. I have a guide of how to do that with pictures. So if anybody wants that, I'll give you my information at the end. I'd be happy to share that. Let's talk about interpreters for 1 sec. Make sure that you have orders entered, obviously, for your interpreters for the next court date, and the Chief Judge's office gets a copy of that order. And let the clerk know in the chat that you're expecting or you need an interpreter. By doing that, just like you do now in court, they'll let the interpreter know, and the interpreter will join the Zoom. Please keep in mind that they probably have more than one, or they'll have several rooms that they need to be in. So if they join the Zoom and they can't wait around, they'll leave and come back. So if for whatever reason the judge is in the middle of a lengthy hearing when they join, and they aren't able to get the case called that needs an interpreter, they may leave and rejoin later. And I've been told that by the Chief Judge's office that non-Spanish interpreters will typically only be available at 1:30. Some misdemeanor division specific things. The misdemeanor division is going to be doing basically status dates, conference and setting, discovery issues. You can raise fitness, any non-hearings. You can still waive your client's presence even on the Zoom. You can also still do agreed orders, which means neither you or the client have to appear or Zoom if you arrange that with the prosecutor. Trial calls, as the judge said, will be over Zoom and then continue to later in the morning, either 11 or 1:30. As I mentioned before, there's no quick in-person exceptions. And also just keep in mind that everybody is going to be in the Zoom room with you. So everyone else is going to be able to see everybody that's in the room, just like they can see everything in court. And so now instead of Judge Guerin floating from room to room, now he'll be clicking Zoom to Zoom. And I'm sure you will see him pop in as well. Inmates are going to mostly be either 11 or 1:30. They certainly aren't going to be before that. A lot of private attorneys I know are concerned about being in multiple rooms. Since most rooms are going to be using the chat feature, you could check in with a room and let them know that you're there, but you have another room to go to. That's probably the easiest way. If you keep your video off, they know that you're not ready. Some courtrooms may be going down a list from the first, in alphabetical order, and then just kind of re-going through that. Some might be playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I think it's going to depend on the judge. You could use multiple devices. I don't really recommend it because if you're called on by one judge while you're talking to another, I think that'll be confusing. There are some Zoom licenses, some paid ones that allow for multiple windows to be open at once. But just like you can't really do 2 courtrooms at once now, I think doing 2 courtrooms over Zoom would be difficult. Some quick tips, just quickly. You want to be seen, right? Backlighting is bad. You can't be seen there. Too close is bad. Too far away is bad. The judges are going to have multiple screens up at the same time of all the people. So again, don't ruin the Zoom. You also want to be heard. This is court, and there will be court reporters taking down everything. So make sure you click the unmute button. If you rustle a paper over your microphone, I don't know if you could hear that, it's really bad. Don't do that. Also, you don't need to yell. Don't ruin the Zoom. One feature that I found in Zoom that's very helpful is if you are muted and you hit the space bar, it unmutes you. As soon as you let go of the space bar, you're muted again. You're going to want to experiment with that, but that's very helpful. So you have to push the space bar to talk. As soon as you let go, you're back on mute. You should identify yourself and identify your client. Maybe have them wave again, because there's all the little boxes on the judge's screen. And waving, you might want to waive their physical appearance in court and say that orally. Otherwise, the judge may inquire. Again, Zoom is being recorded. Everything is on the record. So if you need to go into a breakout room, you can ask the judge to do that. Be professional. You should be dressed for court, just like, at least on the top, right? And again, the prosecutors may not be able to have off Zoom conversations or text while they're Zooming. They're going to have quite a bit on their plate. Again, we're still in court. I've told my staff none of the reactions that are available in Zoom, although fun, probably not court appropriate. You also can't record or screenshot this. And you might want to mention that to your clients as well. Don't ruin the Zoom. I recommend practicing. I tried wireless headphones and I could hear, but I couldn't be heard. So I had to change the setting on my computer to do that. So find a partner, try a Zoom, make sure that you can hear and they can hear you. The court has a number of resources to help you with this transition. Rules of conduct and the Zoom instruction sheet were on the Zoom hearing website that Lisa showed you. All the administrative orders and other things are, so Lisa showed you this and this. The court's website has a whole COVID-19 resource page that's available that has all kinds of things available for you as well. They have all kinds of assistance if you really don't know how to use Zoom, that is there. If anybody has any issues or questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them both now or later. If you want instructions on how to take pictures with your phone and turn them to PDFs, I can send you that. It's my email address there. And for everybody that remembers the 1970s, that's for you. And I will turn it back over now to Chuck for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Judge Guerin, Lisa, and Jeff. We have a few questions. Let's see, there was a question in the chat about arraignments and whether or not defendants should be physically present at arraignment. Is that an in-person hearing? And is there a difference between misdemeanors and felonies?
Judge Bugos, you want to address that one?
Yeah, well, in misdemeanors, you know, the attorneys and defendants are being advised that they have the right to waive their presence at the critical proceedings. So if they don't want to waive their presence, then they have the right to be present to be arraigned, but then it's going to be continued to 11 o'clock or 1:30 for them to be present to do the actual in-person arraignment. So otherwise, we'll just take the arraignment with the attorney indicating they've talked to their client and they're waiving their right to be present.
And on felonies?
I mean, I think that's the same procedure. Jeff, I don't know if you have any thoughts, or Bob, but I think that's the same procedure.
In court, what we've been doing now with inmates where we waive their presence or clients we've waived their presence, we've just continued the arraignment by agreement. So I anticipate you could do the same thing if you wanted to do that, if the judge would permit that.
All right, there was another question on the Q&A feature about if we need to show the state or court documents, are we permitted to attach the file using the chat function to the people on the other side?
I thought the administrative order said that any documents had to be sent at least the day beforehand to the email addresses of the judges.
Yes, that's what it says in the admin order.
Okay. Thank you. There was another question about sex offenders who are restricted from accessing the internet.
Well, I think, you know, one of the exceptions that's outlined in the order is other matters that the judge deems must proceed in person. So if that comes up, the judge has the discretion to decide, I got to have this person here in court.
One of our more bashful colleagues didn't type anything in Q&A, but sent me a text question, and that question is, what about 9:30 trial calls in the courtrooms, the misdemeanor courtrooms? Is a client required to be on the Zoom for the 9:30 trial call for answering ready at that point?
Yeah, we decided that for the trial calls, even though they're being conducted by Zoom, to be able to answer ready, the defendant has to be present on the Zoom call. So they do have to be present on the call.
Thank you, Judge. And then I think we've kind of touched on this. On the 9:30 trial call, the state will make a call, use their call-in process to determine whether or not they're ready to proceed to trial. I think this came up in the misdemeanor informal meeting we had the other day, Judge Beavers.
Yeah, I mean, the court's going to also make a call for, if there's people present in the courtroom, we'll make a call for witnesses on behalf of both parties, especially the state, if they have people who didn't comply with the call-in. So the state will hopefully know whether their witnesses are called in or not, and we'll make a call for witnesses too, in case there's somebody in the courtroom who personally appeared to be a
And I
witness.
think we talked about if there was a witness there, then we would let the state know, and perhaps somebody from their office would be able to come down and talk to the witness, even though the in-person hearings wouldn't be conducted until later.
Right.
Let's see here. There was another colleague pitched this scenario to me the other day, and I think Jeff answered it. If an attorney has 8:30 traffic court and then a number of 8:30 or 9 o'clocks, and then has to be back at 11 o'clock for an in-person hearing, you can do the 8:30 traffic court in person, you can do the 11 o'clock in person, but in that interim, you have to find some technological source to be able to zoom in on the other cases. I think that's what has been indicated. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. So if you have, if you have a Zoom hearing, you can go to the ARC or somewhere else to do that.
And there's a question on the Q&A about the ARC, if clients are going to be instructed to go to the ARC, and the answer I think is no, but there are going to be public terminals in the law library. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Let's see, if a client does not have internet access and they're calling in, do they call the clerk's office to get the phone number, ID, and passcode? I guess that's a good question. Is there any way to get that? I know there's a way to call in rather than using the internet, but I guess it'd be incumbent upon the attorney to provide that to a client. It's probably the most efficient way.
They can always call the clerk's office, but they're going to end up in a phone queue, so they might not be able to get somebody on the phone to answer that question in a super timely manner. So if they can get that information from their attorney, that would be the fastest.
Let's see, there are a question, looks like it's a municipal prosecutor question. We have to be prepared for each case that is called. How are orders to be prepared simultaneously when they're dealing with individual cases?
I don't think I understand that question.
Maybe I don't either. I guess maybe multitasking is the only way to go. There's a question about if a case is less than 6 months old. This is from Michelle. Who?
Oh, wait a minute, Chuck. Can we go?
Yes, Judge.
I'm not. I mean, can you read that last one again so we can try?
Sure. It says, I'll read it verbatim. It says, as prosecutors, we have to be prepared for each and every case that is called. How are orders to be prepared simultaneously while we are dealing with individual cases?
Well, how do they do it now in court? I mean, if I don't understand how they do it now in court. I would imagine it's the same way. Sometimes they have to wait to do the order while they step up on the next case. But I mean, in court now, that happens where they finish a case, they have to do an order, then the next case gets called. So unless I'm misunderstanding, I don't know why it's so different from what happens in court. I don't know, Judge Bugos.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, one courtroom's all local prosecutors, but as another one steps up when a different case is called, they go and do the orders. And now there's not the urgency to get some orders done to get copies to the defendants because there's not going to be defendants there. So I think in my courtroom, we talked about that and said there's not the urgency to get the orders done right away. We'd rather get through the Zoom call and then we'll have time at the end of the call to do the orders.
And that actually brings up a question I have. If I'm an attorney and I want to get an order for a client, what's the quickest, most efficient way for me to get a copy of an order that was entered on a Zoom hearing? Thank you.
If attorneys have access or have a login to our e-access website, which is e-access.18thjudicial.org, All copies of signed orders will be available for 7 days from the date on which it was signed, so from the file date of the order. So the attorney can log into e-access and get a copy of those signed orders for 7 days after the order was signed.
Thank you, Lisa. There was a question from Michelle Moore Norton, and she's a municipal prosecutor for a number of towns, and asking if they're able to enter an agreed order without requiring a Zoom appearance in a case less than 6 months old. And Judge Bugos, I think we dealt with this again in the meeting we had the other day, and Ms. Delamar from the State's Attorney's Office was there, and there was a willingness to work with agreed orders if at all possible. So I imagine that would apply to municipal cases as well.
Yeah, it will. And, basically I told the prosecutors that we're fine with agreed orders, except, obviously everyone used their discretion. And if the case, at least in my courtroom, if the case is a year old, that perhaps there's not going to be an agreed order, depending on the circumstances, it will most likely then need an appearance on Zoom to find out what's going on.
There's a question, do defendants need to appear on the Zoom call with their attorney? I think we've established what the rules are there, so hopefully I think that one's been answered. What if a defendant does have internet access to get the phone number to call in? We answered that one already. It's get it from your attorney, or theoretically you could call the clerk's office, although that you may not be able to get the answer quickly that way. Let's see, there's a question from probation. As far as probation, are we expected to utilize the I-2 file system as well? How are judges expecting probation officers to be present on Zoom? Typically, we tend to go up for probation violation notices, hearings, and if requested there by the prosecutor.
Well, I believe the probation officers can access Zoom like everybody else. So they would be present on Zoom if necessary.
And any of the hearings that they might have would be scheduled at either 11 or 1:30 for in-person anyway.
Yes, I think with petitions to revoke, if those are filed, the judge is going to probably have to make a determination as to whether or not bond is going to be set, and there's a potential for the person to be taken into custody. So it'll be in the judge's discretion to say, well, this one I'm going to continue over in person to have that situation addressed. Is that what's contemplated, Judge?
Yes, it is. I mean, and it could be dependent if it's significant enough that same day. I mean, normally it's on Zoom at 8:30 to whatever, and then we set it over to 11 or 1:30 for an in-person appearance if it's significant enough, or maybe another day.
Right.
There are a couple of questions that I think are asking about, are police officers needed to be on Zoom at 9 a.m. For the SS call or 10:30 for the trial call? And Judge Bugos, I know that we talked about this at the other meeting we had.
Yeah, we're not requiring the police officers to be present. It's just like trials where the police officer would be on call to hopefully give the state's attorney a contact number where they can be contacted to come in, an hour and a half or 2 hours later for the hearing or the trial, but they don't have to be, you won't be seeing the whites of their eyes for summary suspension hearings or for trials on the Zoom call for the court calls. For the trial calls.
Okay. Let's see. How will failures to report via Zoom be handled? And I'm wondering if that's a probation failure to report.
I'm sorry. I'm not really understanding.
The question is, how will failures to report via Zoom be handled? Okay, maybe. So how are failures to report via Zoom be handled?
You mean failures to appear?
If I could jump in, that's for a question, I believe, from the probation department.
Okay.
Well, what we've been doing now is doing a clerk to notify to give them an opportunity. Maybe there's some kind of special circumstances, but if they continue not to appear, then, you know, a warrant most likely would get issued at some point. But we're trying to be flexible, understanding that there's a lot going on in people's lives right now. So whether they've gotten the notice or know how to appear, probably the first failure, we'll just send a, you know, do a clerk to notify.
If an attorney is on the video part of Zoom and the defendant is only able to phone in, can the defense attorney still answer ready for trial or for hearing?
Yes, I would think so, as long as that's another means of being on Zoom. So I think the judge would accept that that person's present.
What if an attorney is Zooming on multiple cases? When does Zooming get cut off? It gets cut off at up to 11. At 11 a.m., then things switch over to in person.
I don't think it's cut off, correct? That's just setting the timeline for the in-person. So just as I don't think if a judge is somehow done with a Zoom call and it's before 11 o'clock and the parties are there and ready to be present in a courtroom, I think they're going to proceed before 11 o'clock. But these are the rough parameters as we start to determine times for things.
Let's see, there's a question. If a defendant cannot get to the Zoom meeting to work the day of the court and therefore does not appear, are warrants being issued or will warrants be issued? And again, Judge Bugos, I think we covered this the other day, that warrants are beginning to get issued, but only under, there's usually at least one chance to show up.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's going to be, you know, that's in the judge's discretion. I think Judge Bugos is right. We're tending to be, you know, lenient as far as depending on what the situation is. We understand there may be a failure to appear and most likely a clerk to notify, but we're not saying there's a blanket rule that no warrant will ever get issued the first time. It just depends on what we're dealing with. It's in the judge's discretion. So if somebody, you know, hasn't been there at all, and now they're not there this time, and it's a serious matter, the judge may issue the warrant. So I just don't want anybody under the misimpression everybody's going to get a clerk to notify the first time. Probably the vast majority will, you know, because we understand what's happening, but it's judge's discretion.
Let's see here. There's a question about the, specifically it's about 4007, which has the domestic violence courtroom, which has a pretty high turnover as far as the trial call goes. And the question is, given the volume it takes to just, and the time it takes to decide which cases are ready, will his misdemeanor trials be continued until 1:30, or will we be expected to be ready with clients at 11 a.m.?
I think we're all just afraid to ask Judge Deaton that. No, I think it's probably 1:30, I would imagine. I think 11 o'clocks are like, if there's a guilty plea they want to get done, or some sort of motion maybe they think they can do, but trials, I'm imagining in that courtroom is going to be 1:30.
Yeah, trials are really pretty much
almost always, right?
in all the
Yeah.
courtrooms. Yeah, by the time the witnesses come in, and especially that courtroom goes till into the lunch hour, usually just finishing up the non-trial call.
Yeah, we're not trying to push a trial at 11, generally speaking.
Right. Let's see. I'm reading through some of these questions, which I think we've been able to answer at least a little bit already. And I know that Mr. Berlin's on. There's a question as to whether or not you'd allow your assistants to get agreed dates before court, and should we try to get that done if at all possible? And again, you know, we know that that's something that we should try to do if at all possible, if it's not a significant event. Is that fair to say?
Sir, would I allow my assistants to get what? I didn't hear the rest of that.
The question is, if we have a case coming up, if we reach out to the prosecutor and we agree to a continuance, that's something that we're encouraged to do, unless it's a major hearing or something that's contested.
Yeah, no, I think we do that now. So yes.
Let's see. There's a question about officers being required to attend, officers are required to appear in person in trials. We're not talking about doing any Zoom hearings or summary suspension hearings. That question's been answered because everything we're doing that's contested is going to be in person, correct?
Yes.
There's a question about whether ASAs would be in the physical courtroom on laptops and a headset during the 9 to 11 a.m. Zoom call, and therefore avoid having to run to the 4th floor for an 11 a.m. in-person call.
No, no, we actually, in trying to figure this all out, tried that. There's some technical issues with that and background noise and things, but more importantly, we can't have just the prosecutor in the courtroom with the judge. Not that anything improper would occur, but there's an appearance, you know, I'm not going to have one party in the courtroom with the judge when the other party's not there. So no, they won't be doing things from the courtroom. They'll be doing things, I imagine. You asked Mr. Berlin, but I imagine from their office.
Correct.
And there's a question whether or not it's possible for a judge to take an in-person case prior to 11 a.m. if all parties are present, but that's
No.
not part of what we're doing here. That's the answer is
And
no.
there's not going to be exceptions. And if we don't want to hear it's just a quick thing, you know, we're in and out. It's not going to happen, because once you start, we're just going to be back in the situation where the hallways and the courtrooms are filled with people. That's what we're trying to avoid for everybody's health and safety. It's gotten to a point where we have to pivot and try something different. We cannot continue with the volume of persons in this courthouse on the 4th floor. So don't expect the judge to just do some quick thing. He or she's not going to do that. That doesn't, I mean, you can be in the courtrooms. They're open courtrooms. You know, it's an open courthouse. And we're not saying people can't sit in a courtroom. I'm just saying the judge isn't going to address an in-person matter until it's scheduled to be done so.
Okay. The last question is something I think we've already answered, and that's about police officers being present for SS hearings. Let me just check the chat function.
I mean, if a police officer wants to get on the Zoom meeting and be there, that he or she's more than welcome to do so. But I think it's going to be, you know, they're on call, and the prosecution's going to represent as officers of the court, whether they're ready or not, whether they have their officer.
And then there's one question that's been added, this is for Mr. Berlin. We have the judge's emails. Is there a location where we find ASA emails or even courtroom emails so that that's easily located so that attorneys can reach out to the courtroom prior to a court date?
Yeah, I mean, we can make our emails available. I think they're all available in TextShare. They should be,
Okay.
but we'll make sure they're all available so everyone knows how to get a hold of us.
And which prosecutors in which rooms so we can reach out to the particular person then.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that answers every question in the queue that we have or that I've received by text. If I'm missing anything, please forgive. So does anybody else have anything to add?
I think if you have something on a hearing or a trial call, you know you've got that on the call, please do your best to be ready for that call, because the earlier we can determine what's going, you know, the easier it is on everybody to get an in-person proceeding going. If it had to, you know, if it's an 11 o'clock situation. So I just say that if you know your case is up for a hearing or a trial, it's one of those calls, be ready. Be ready to, you know, answer. Be present is what I mean.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I can hardly wait for Monday.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be really fun. No, it'll be okay. You know, civil, the one thing that the criminal divisions are benefiting from is the clerk's office efforts to make this easier. You know, when we started in civil, there were individual invites going out to attorneys, and the administrative staff was sort of overwhelmed trying to manage all that. The clerk's office has come up with a system that, you know, I don't know, it could be much easier to get into a Zoom hearing at this point. And they've made it clear and easy, and so criminal has kind of benefited from waiting and coming on trying to do this later. So hats off to the clerk's office and all the work they've done to try to make this as seamless as possible. And you know, and like everything else, the things that come up, the lawyers, the court staff's going to figure it out. There's going to be things that, you know, I haven't even thought of, but you guys are in there every day, and I'm confident you'll figure out how to get around glitches or get around some problems, and you'll improvise. And I fully expect that. I'm leaving that to the discretion of the court and the attorneys to figure it out, because I'm confident it'll be done.
Well, thank you, Judge Guerin. Thank you, Judge Bugos, Jeff York, Bob Berlin, Suzanne from the Chief Judge's office, and Lisa from the clerk's office. Kevin and Jeff, you didn't get a chance to speak, but all the material is extremely helpful. As we all note, there may be some growing pains, but I think I for one, am optimistic that this will go as smoothly, and in a couple of weeks, it will be a well-oiled machine.
Oh, I should have mentioned, and I'm sorry. We fully anticipate, especially at the beginning, people will show up in court who are supposed to be Zooming. You know, that obviously that's going to happen. So the deputies do have the clerk's office homepage document and the Zoom video conference rules to hand out to people. So they will explain to them that we're conducting Zoom proceedings. They're not going to have it in person unless it's been scheduled. So they'll hand that to the people and instruct them to go Zoom someplace. So I don't know if maybe it's be an attorney's client that ends up there. But I just want you to know the deputies do have these materials, and they are going to tell the people who happen to be sitting there that this is a Zoom proceeding. So they're not telling them they have to leave the courtroom. They're not kicking them out of the courtroom. They're not telling them the courtroom's closed or anything like that. They're just instructing them that these are Zoom proceedings at this point. So that's why we really need the attorneys to contact your clients and let them know. I think there were, of all the notices that went out, and the clerk's office sent out, I don't even know how many thousands of notices. There were some that we missed because of the court time, the court dates. I think there may be 75, 80 cases that maybe people didn't get that notice. So, you know, the attorneys should do their best as we're getting here to let their clients know what the situation is and try to keep the volume of people down in here. But I also think the clerk's office took it upon themselves to try to notify those people that maybe they missed. Is that right, Mr. Vasky?
That is correct, Judge Guerin. So our criminal traffic department have tried to reach out to people that are scheduled on those cases, which are all set for Monday and Tuesday. And, you know, I expect whoever we're able to get a hold of should be informed.
Also, this is a good opportunity to remind you to keep your clients' addresses up to date in Ducks, because if their address is wrong or old, they're not going to get any notices going forward either.
All right. I think that gets us up to date with all questions and a lot of information. And again, thank you to all involved. And if somebody else has something to add, we can wrap this up then.
Hope just everyone, please be patient. We're all in this together. It's going to be bumpy for a little bit, but there's been a lot of work done. We couldn't anticipate everything, but I'm sure we'll deal with it. So